3 days after the birth, my husband finally arrived, but he wasn't alone. To my astonishment, he brought along an unfamiliar woman. Struggling to find my voice, I managed to ask, "Who is this woman?" My husband responded with a smile, "She's my girlfriend, or rather, my future wife." I was taken aback and asked, "What do you mean by that?" He callously retorted, "I'm tired of you." The woman introduced herself as Scarlett, a 25-year-old corporate employee who had recently been proposed to by my husband William. They had initially met in high school, started dating during their freshman year, briefly broke up in their senior year, and then reconnected as adults when they met up with former classmates for drinks. As adults, their relationship blossomed anew, and after 3 years of dating, William proposed to Scarlett. She happily accepted his proposal, believing in his commitment to love her for the rest of their lives. In her married life with him, she found happiness in being able to spend every day together. Despite both of them working, they cherished their evenings spent together, something they couldn't do in high school. During college, they had lived independently and honed their cooking skills. Now they could share household chores and maintain a balanced life. Her husband had become adept at frying food, which was his specialty. Scarlett, on the other hand, was not proficient at frying, so she appreciated her husband's culinary skills in this regard. On the flip side, I excelled at cooking Japanese cuisine, particularly dishes like steamed vegetables. My husband William used to lavish praise on my cooking, appreciating the delicate balance of flavors I achieved. We believed we would continue supporting each other and lead a happily married life together. About a year into our marriage, I became pregnant, and I was overjoyed. I immediately shared the news with William, who reacted with astonishment. His mouth hung open as if he were a cartoon character. "William? Oh my God, I'm going to be a father," he exclaimed, his slow reaction due to his surprise. "Well, your reaction is a little slow," I teased. "Because you surprised me so much," he replied with excitement. We both shared the thrill of impending parenthood. William was genuinely happy about my pregnancy, and I knew we would cherish the experience of raising our child together. Initially, he was quite concerned about my well-being. "Scarlett, take it easy, okay? You can quit your job if you find it challenging," he offered. Grateful for his support, I replied, "Thank you, but I plan to work until my maternity leave begins." He assured me, "Okay, I'll handle the household chores then. Thank you." Thanks to his dedication and support, I was able to cope well during my morning sickness. As I entered a more stable phase of pregnancy, the delivery date drew nearer. However, around this time, my husband started coming home late. "Did you work late again today?" I inquired one evening. He admitted, "Yes, I had to stay late. I delegated some tasks to my colleagues." He explained that since I was in a stable period, he felt it was time to reciprocate the company's kindness for allowing him to leave work on time earlier. I understood his reasoning, saying, "I see. So you made an effort to come home despite the overtime. Your health is the most important thing." He acknowledged, "Yes, but I've been neglecting my work lately. I don't want to be jobless once the baby arrives." I reassured him, saying, "That's understandable. I might go to my parents' house during maternity leave. It will be a little lonely staying at home alone, but if that helps you focus on work, I'm fine with it." William expressed relief and agreed, "That's a good idea. It will give me peace of mind to work overtime without worrying about you." I missed being with my husband during my pregnancy, but I found solace in the supportive environment of my parents' home. I moved back to their house as soon as my maternity leave began. It was comforting to be in a familiar space without the burden of household chores. Having my mother around provided an extra layer of security. However, one thing that concerned me was my husband's slow responses to my messages. In the past, he would reply promptly, even during his busiest times. Whether it was about my morning sickness or just a casual message while I was at work, he used to respond right away. But now, it often took a day or even two for him to reply, and the tone of his messages had changed as well. On a recent occasion, I sent him a message expressing concern about his long hours at work and urging him not to overexert himself. His response was terse, a simple yes. This worried me because I was already missing him, and his delayed and less affectionate replies added to my anxiety. However, I realized that dwelling on it wouldn't be healthy, especially since I was pregnant, so I decided to give him some space and time. To keep a positive mindset, I began thinking about plans for after the baby's arrival and purchased various baby items. My parents were also thrilled about becoming grandparents and eagerly participated in preparing for our child's arrival. Their excitement was evident as they asked questions and offered support while shopping for baby essentials. I didn't let my husband's delayed responses depress me, and I focused on preparing for the due date, which had finally arrived. I sent him a message informing him that today was my due date and requested him to be ready to rush to the hospital once he heard from me. However, he didn't even read the message. I assumed he might be engrossed in work, but I hoped he would be more attentive, considering the impending arrival of our baby. My contractions had begun, signaling the arrival of the long-awaited moment when I would finally give birth. However, I found myself in a situation where I couldn't contact my husband directly. Instead, I asked my mother to leave a message for him, notifying him that I was going into labor and that our child would be born today. Despite the urgency, he didn't respond to any of my calls or messages. As the day turned into night, my husband was still absent. With each passing moment, my anxiety grew. Eventually, I had no choice but to proceed to the delivery room without him. The labor was more challenging and prolonged than I had anticipated, mainly due to the umbilical cord being wrapped around our baby's neck. Nearly a full day passed from the onset of contractions to the actual birth. When I finally laid eyes on my newborn daughter and held her in my arms, the exhaustion and pain I had endured seemed to vanish instantly. She was a beautiful baby girl, and I marveled at her resilience during the challenging birth. I exchanged heartfelt words with my baby before resting, my body drained from the ordeal. Later, I woke up in my hospital room, greeted by my mother who had been keeping watch over me. She asked how I was feeling, and I replied that I was doing reasonably well. However, her expression quickly turned somber as she shared her concerns about my husband's absence. I reassured her that it bothered me too, especially since our child had already been born. I couldn't fathom why my husband hadn't made it to the hospital. Frustration welled up inside me. I had sent him a message announcing the birth of our baby, and his response came several hours later, stating that he would be able to visit the hospital the day after tomorrow. I couldn't understand why he couldn't prioritize being with us at this crucial moment. Until the birth, I had tried to suppress these negative feelings, but now that our baby was in the world, there was no need to hold back. I couldn't comprehend why he couldn't come immediately when our child had just been born. It should have been a top priority. My anger boiled over as I poured my frustration into the message I sent to him. However, my husband merely read the message and didn't bother to reply. I couldn't comprehend his indifference. He had been so thrilled when I had announced my pregnancy, but now he appeared disinterested. My parents were furious about my husband's unreasonable behavior, with my father even vowing to lecture him soon. Finally, 3 days after the birth, my husband made an appearance, but he wasn't alone. He had brought an unfamiliar woman with him. I was so taken aback that words failed me. My husband, in contrast, seemed oddly composed. "You appear to be doing well," he remarked casually. I couldn't contain my anger. "Then why didn't you respond to my messages when I was in distress?" I demanded, channeling my frustration through the words. My husband's reply was astounding. He smiled and introduced the woman next to him, saying, "This is my girlfriend, or rather, my future wife." The shock left me speechless, and I stammered out, "What?" in disbelief. The woman chimed in, "Oh no, what do you mean by future wife?" She giggled and lightly tapped my husband's shoulder, adding, "I'm embarrassed. What do you mean?" My husband's tone was oddly cold as he explained, "It means that you and I are divorced." My world crumbled at his words. I struggled to process the reality. "Wait a minute. Are you saying you had an affair?" My husband and his new partner seemed unfazed. She replied, "Well, adultery doesn't sound very romantic. It's more like I found someone new to love, and we got together." I was still grappling with shock and confusion. "I don't understand. How could you?" My husband continued with cruel words, "I'm simply tired of you. You see, men are drawn to women who take care of themselves." His words cut deep, and I couldn't hold back my anger. "Are you suggesting I haven't taken care of myself? I gained weight because I was pregnant and had morning sickness. Besides, it's normal to gain weight during pregnancy. Is that why you had an affair? Because I gained weight during our pregnancy." He offered a hurtful explanation. I wanted to preserve the romantic feelings I had for my wife, even after marriage. "Unfortunately, I don't have those feelings for you anymore. I found someone even better." The pain and betrayal I felt were indescribable. My world had been shattered, and I struggled to come to terms with this devastating revelation. My husband and the adulterer continued their flirtation right in front of me, pushing me to my breaking point. Unable to bear it any longer, I finally snapped. "Enough, I'm done. Just divorce me and get out of here," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with anger and frustration. Without waiting for their response, I decided to leave the room myself. My husband and the adulterer made their way out of the hospital room without a second glance at our child. Their indifference was painfully evident, and it reinforced my decision to become a single mother. Emotionally overwhelmed by the circumstances, I sank into a deep depression after giving birth. However, my solitude was disrupted when the hospital room's door suddenly swung open, startling me. To my surprise, it was my husband and my mother-in-law who entered. I questioned their presence, wondering why they were here. My mother-in-law began to explain the situation, revealing that she had encountered my husband and his mistress in the hospital parking lot. Upon hearing the truth from my husband, she promptly sent the adulterer away and brought my husband back to me. My mother-in-law scolded him fiercely. "What do you think you're doing? Having an affair with another woman while your precious wife is pregnant and then asking for a divorce? You have no idea how many times your father would have reprimanded you if he were alive." My father-in-law had passed away a few years ago, but his memory still loomed large. My husband tried to justify his actions. I didn't have a choice. She pursued me and I fell in love with her. My mother-in-law turned to me and asked, "Scarlett, do you still want to be married to William?" I had already made up my mind, and I responded firmly, "No, I want a divorce." My husband's face oddly lit up upon hearing my decision, but my mother-in-law quickly added a condition. "Well, that's fine, but you'll need to pay alimony for your adultery and child support." My husband was taken aback. "What? Adultery? What do you mean, send money? What?" Scarlett didn't know about this. My mother-in-law's revelation left me stunned. Apparently, my husband had been asking her to send him a few $1,000s every month, claiming that he needed it to secure his life with me. This was news to me, as my husband's income was indeed lower than mine, but we had never discussed such an arrangement. In fact, he had used the money my mother-in-law sent him to sustain his affair. My mother-in-law's anger reached its peak. "I'm going to make you pay back every penny I ever gave you. I will cut all ties with you. Don't ever come to my house again." Desperate to make amends, my husband tried to interject. "No, wait, Scarlett, I'm sorry I bothered you. I'm going to get you a good divorce lawyer, and you can take all the money you want from that guy." I thanked my mother-in-law for her support, and she left the hospital with my husband. I pursued my divorce proceedings, demanding alimony and child support from my husband, and even seeking alimony from his adulterous partner. My husband, burdened by debt and abandoned by my mother-in-law, soon found himself alone and impoverished. He spent his days fulfilling his obligations of paying alimony and child support, all while I ensured that my child had no contact with him. I wanted him to carry the weight of his actions for the rest of his life while meeting his financial responsibilities. As a single mother, I returned to work and dedicated myself to raising my child. I maintained a close relationship with my mother-in-law, who had proven to be a wonderful person throughout this ordeal. Although my ex-husband's actions were despicable, I was grateful that they had allowed me to form a strong bond with her. Having an affair while I was pregnant was a reprehensible act, and I wished there were more severe consequences for his actions. However, I was relieved that the other woman had ultimately rid herself of such a scoundrel. My hope was to provide a happy and secure life for my daughter as we moved forward.